Skill development, divot, center face contact, club face, and club path. So with the divot, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna try to swing a little too low, a little too high, try to move my divot too far forward, too far backward, and I'm gonna recommit to the free swinging motion to see how my divot placement is.
Very good. So the divot is the #1 fundamental necessary variable that has to happen for you to make solid contact. So if you're not messing around with that divot, you are missing out on a lot. So show us how you would work through that part of it.
So if I'm on grass, I would have maybe a tee or something in the ground so I can kind of see where the golf club is striking the ground relative to the turf. So what I'm gonna do at first, I'm gonna try to swing too low. So I'm gonna sense a divot that might be a little bit too deep. I'm not gonna try to go too high, take no divot. I'm gonna try to brush the grass a couple times just to make sure that I can move it around a little bit.
So being flexible and being adaptable and being very, very clear that the divot is critical are super, super important to your skill development. So Ben just demonstrated that. Everybody, when they come here, mostly is inconsistent because they're contact issues. Divot is where we start. Swing height, what you just demonstrated, is where you got to learn to look first. Okay, so now with the ball in the way, what are you going to do?
With the ball in the way, I'm just going to be playful. So I'm going to try to get my divot a little too thick on a couple swings. I'm going to try to scull it for a couple swings, and I'm going to try to brush the grass. And I'm just going to observe what the ball does. I'm not going to try to get this right. We're just observing what the ball does, because sometimes there's a disconnect between what you think is going to happen, we call that the intention, versus what actually happens, we call that the reality.
Very good. So where will you start first?
I'm going to go try to swing a little bit too low or a little too deep with my divot.
Okay. All right, so I could see that you hit behind the ball, an inch or so. Ball didn't fly as far as you'd like it to. That's because the divot was too
low.
That's
too
right.
Low.
So it's not because there was something wrong with his swing or his head was down too long or whatever people say. It's just the divot was too low.
And I tried to do that.
That's right. Okay, so now on the next one, what will you do?
I'm going to try to take no divot at all or scull it.
Very good. So different contact than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. What are you going to do on this one?
I'm going to try to brush the grass.
All right. Very good. Better contact. So we're going to ask you in your training sessions, starting with the free swinging motion, committing to one thing, and then start to play with the divot. So we noticed the distance on those shots changed, and it was because of the difference in the divots, yes?
Divot was in a different location.
All right, very good. So after they play around with this for 3 or 4 minutes, then what would you do?
Then I'm going to go to moving the divot too far forward and too far back. Okay, so now I'd warm up with a couple swings, same thing, tee in the ground. Going to try to brush the grass too far in front. Going to try to brush the grass too far behind. Then I'm going to try to brush the grass in the appropriate location. Then I'm going to run that same experiment with the golf ball in the way.
Very good. You want to try it?
See what happens. Yeah. So
good.
let's go too far forward to start.
Too far forward.
That was way too far forward, yes. Now I'm going to go too far backwards.
So notice that when we do this, Ben is being playful. He's not trying to be perfect. Learning to move the divot around, so the divot was way behind. You did that on purpose. And then somewhere in between. So we're asking you to do this so you can become highly aware of why the ball does what it does, and then furthermore, what to do to help yourself. So if when you're training, you're not clear on what to do to help yourself or why the ball does what it does, you're going to be flying in the dark, if you will. Okay.
The other thing to be aware of when you're doing these activities, make sure you're not taking in too much information. What we mean by that, if you're working on the divot, work on the divot.
Stay in that lane.
Don't worry about center face contact. Don't worry about the direction. Stay in the divot lane. Because if you start chasing all the other stuff, what you're gonna notice is your training session got out of control quick, because now you're chasing perfect shots. You're not really working on developing skills anymore.
Very good. So far, let's say that Ben was doing this for 7 minutes, 8 minutes each. You're working on the free swinging motion in the divot. So for right now, it's starting the process of being productive with swinging and hitting it more solid.
You got it.
True?
Mm-hmm.